Ajit, I want to dive straight into something that we've been covering journalistically. It's been in the news, and so I want to start strong with that. You've got this big collision between the government and Twitter as far as public policy is concerned, and that is also the topic of this conversation, Ajit, on the banning of handles and things like that. And I know Twitter doesn't concern you, but the implications of what happens in this collision, and permit me to say collision because it's seen to be something that's escalating day on day. There are pretty aggressive statements that have come out from the government. Twitter has defended. How do you see it? How do you see it, and what kind of implications it may have for the relationship between the Indian government and social media companies?
Shiv, thank you for having me. Would have loved to have been there in person. Let me step back and talk about the overall context, Shiv, as you mentioned, rather than dive into a particular aspect of another company. And I want to call out a few things, Shiv. One, there's no question that we benefit as a company that believes in freedom of speech and expression. We definitely benefit from the ability to operate in India with freedom on the back of an open internet. I think across Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, as a company, we have benefited from it. And I genuinely also think if you look at the last few years in terms of the dramatic explosion and access to the internet in India, while a lot of the focus may be on content moderation, I do think there's been extraordinary leaps that India has made that really allows us as a country to leverage the internet to make dramatic improvements in people's lives, and in many ways to create new models for the world as a whole. So I think for me, that is the starting point. The second point to address your question is, I do think, and I think you alluded to it, Shiv.
Yes.
As a company, when we have platforms like Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, and as you mentioned, we benefit from the fact that hundreds of millions of Indians they live their lives on these platforms. Can you hear me, Shiv? Anything you want me to do different?
We can hear you, Ajit. Go ahead.
Okay. We do absolutely have a responsibility. We absolutely have a responsibility to make sure that even as these platforms are used for free expression, they're deeply embedded in the lives of Indians every day. Equally, we also have a responsibility when it comes to making sure that we do everything we can to reduce harm. And there is always a trade-off. And the way we deal with those trade-offs is through the articulation of our community standards that are global in nature. That allows us to say what kind of behavior is not allowed on our platforms. And a lot of those community standards were developed over the years with inputs from multiple stakeholders, including governments around the world, that allows us to create these canvases for expression, especially in a democratic country like India, while equally allowing us to play the obligation and responsibility we have to keep users safe. And the third one that I want to mention is we do have under Section 69A of the law,
yes,
we have established protocols for engaging with the government, in this case, the IT ministry, for orders that we receive from the governments outside of the actions that we do under our community standards. And as a responsible company, we absolutely respect Indian law. And I believe that the process that we have established, both under the law and through clarifications from the courts in India, allows us as private companies, as social media companies, to engage with the government, to articulate our point of view, and then to take the necessary measures. And those protocols have been in place, Shiv, for a long time. And I trust those processes. We engage sincerely on the back of what is clearly articulated as protocols under Section 69A. So hopefully that gives you a context of how we at Facebook think about it. Sure.